Good morning and welcome to this video where we're going to discuss how we should be dealing with artists that have fallen from grace. I know I normally do breakdowns of philosophical or political concepts, but every so often something comes up in the public discourse, in current affairs, which I think it's going to be of benefit to break that down and pick apart the kind of things you want to be thinking about when you are considering what side to take, if you take a side at all, or at least when debating it. While we're prefacing things, we should put in a trigger warning for this video for sexual assault. And while we're also prefacing things, I am aware that paedophilia, hebephilia and ephebophilia are different things. I am aware that the law will consider them all something along the lines of sexual assault of a minor. I am also aware that all through this video I am just going to call it paedophilia because it's much easier to discuss it in that way, and for the purpose of this debate doesn't actually make a difference which one we're talking about. So let's get stuck in, and because I like to start with the basics, I'm going to start with some affairs that aren't nearly as current as the ones we're going to be talking about very soon. So, to start with, I'm going to tell you about Gary Glitter. Now, for people that are outside the UK or who are perhaps a bit too young to know who Gary Glitter is, Gary Glitter was a glam rock star. He and the Glitter Band were the prototypes for what we would consider a glam rock band today. And certainly in Britain, his songs were extremely well known, actually around the world. So if you've ever heard a "Do you wanna be in my gang, my gang, my gang," or a "Rock and roll, hey, rock and roll," or something along those lines, you've been listening to Gary Glitter. In fact, if it was that last one, you've probably been singing along to Gary Glitter. And if you've been listening to him in a reputable establishment of some sort, then that probably means that you've been paying money to Gary Glitter, and that means that you will have been paying money to a convicted paedophile. He may be in prison now, but I'm pretty sure that money is still technically his, so... Well, that's terrible, but you know what? I'm thinking most of us can probably get away with not listening to Leader of the Gang or Rock and Roll Part 2, catchy as those songs may be. So surely that's a good thing, but spare a thought for a moment for instance, his wife and kids. Now, I've not done any research on this, but I'm going to guess they've not done anything wrong. They don't deserve to not have access to that money that you would have been paying for listening to the song which you enjoy. Although, sure, you know, they didn't do anything to deserve that money, but what about the Glitter Band? The Glitter Band, they worked hard. They put in the effort, they played the songs, they went on tours. That was their livelihoods that they built up, and they can't get booked for love nor money. So that's a really shit life for them, because you're going to be punishing their frontman. Now, that's not to say that they've got it worse than the victims of Gary Glitter, but we are allowed to sympathise with more than one person at a time. So that's tricky. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say that if we were to try and hash this out in the comments, that we're probably going to end up thinking, let's just not listen to Gary Glitter anymore, and nobody's going to be too torn up about it. R. Kelly, however, is a different matter. He had a whole swathe of songs that were just really great in a bunch of different genres. Now, I remember one of my old jobs where we used to regularly put on I Believe I Can Fly, because on the one hand, it's a great song, everybody loves it, and on the other hand, there was one person in the office who really hated it, and therefore it was objectively hilarious to put it on. Not only that, it's the soundtrack to a film that many people, rightly or wrongly, consider a key part of their childhood, and so that's going to have a lot of nostalgia built up in it, that being Space Jam. And that's not it. The remix to Ignition is something that I'm guessing you could start playing in pretty much any club or any party, and the place would blow up, because it's just a bit of a bop, isn't it? Conversely, the original Ignition is only suitable for pub quizzes. Moving on from that, the intro to Bump and Grind, it has this pure mimetic quality that is just gold for any lazy comedy writer. And then you have Trapped in the Closet, which is an utter delight for anybody who has had to suffer through the entire lot of it. And it goes on, including such classics as She's Got That Vibe, which was on a DFS advert. But the thing about R. Kelly is that he is constantly in and out of court on paedophilia charges. As I film this, he's been charged with yet more accusations of paedophilia. And even the stuff that he readily admits to, his actual relationships, all seem to be with women that are far, far below the creepiness threshold. Even if it turns out that that unending string of accusers are all lying, it's hard to deny that he probably wishes he could do those things. And much like Gary Glitter, he's still alive, but unlike Gary Glitter, he is not in jail. So listening to his music not only means that you are giving him money, that he can actually do something with that money. And by the sounds of his ability to post bail, he has been doing a lot with that money. And that's every time you hear it in a bar, every time you stream it on your 90s kids Spotify playlist. That's him getting money. So now the debate is trickier. These are songs that people genuinely would prefer not to live without. But just like Gary Glitter, he's got a wife, he's got kids. I mean, she's not his wife anymore, I don't think. But either way, people that would be benefiting from his money who are not him. And once again, just like Gary Glitter, he has a whole team of people around him who actually did work hard to make that music, to disseminate that music. And they're not going to be getting any royalties from it either if you just don't listen to it. And let's spare a thought for everyone involved in Space Jam. Because sure, Michael Jordan, Bill Murray, they're probably pretty well off. They don't care too much about it. But how many office workers are there at Warner Brothers? How many people are in the studio? How many people work on all the different facets of making that film that would be making no money if you just stop watching it because it's got that song in it? So that's tricky. But although R. Kelly is a current affair, he is of course not the current affair that we want to be talking about, and that current affair is Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson needs no explanation. King of Pop was not a throwaway title that was given to him by some teen magazine. It is a title that was, and probably still is, representative of the insane cultural impact that he had on the world. Certainly there was a point where you could go anywhere in the world, to the most remote little villages anywhere, and they would know who Michael Jackson is, and they would love Michael Jackson. The Beatles may have been bigger than Jesus, but Michael Jackson bought the rights to the Beatles. I could play dozens of his songs to you, and you would know them all. You might not have even realised that they were his songs, but they will have been part of the pop cultural fabric of your life. I remember when Michael Jackson died, Radio 1 did a top 20 Michael Jackson songs, and every single song was introduced by a different presenter, explaining why that song was their favourite Michael Jackson song. These are songs that are part of people's lives and part of their identities. But Michael Jackson was accused on multiple occasions of paedophilia, and he may never have been convicted, but now the accusations keep coming after his death as well, and we are hearing some harrowing stories, and those harrowing stories are very believable. And the debate gets trickier still, but let's start with some of the threads from the previous two cases we've been looking at. So first off, Michael Jackson is dead, and that means that fundamentally the money that is earned from your listening to or buying his music doesn't go to him because he's a dead person. And what that means is that all of those royalties then get split between children's charities and his family. And I'm going to guess that if his family have any sense, they're probably giving a lot of it to children's charities as well. So not only does you listening to his music not benefit Michael Jackson himself, but instead it actually benefits the kinds of people that would have been his victims. But then we have the other side of this, which is the bit that doesn't come up with R. Kelly or with Gary Glitter, and that is his personality. The story goes that Jackson was effectively developmentally challenged, that he had the mind of a child, and thus he preferred the company of children. And what that means is that when he interacted with children, he did things that as a child would just be exploring your body, but as an adult would very much be a crime and taking advantage of somebody that doesn't know what they're doing. And I'm in no way qualified to tell you whether that is true or it isn't, whether it can be true or if it can't be, but it does bring up another side to these kinds of debates, which is how aware is the perpetrator of their crimes? And actually this becomes a problem across the board with things like sexual assault, because once you start factoring in toxic masculinity, then you have to wonder, well, how aware are they that what they are doing is wrong? I will regularly see men in pubs just full on power posing over a woman that is half their size, and they'll probably tell me that that's just what flirting looks like. Potentially the woman will also tell me that's just what flirting looks like. Now if you throw into the mix people that have genuine problems with socializing, and you can see how you might have people who genuinely have no idea that what they are doing is deeply wrong and traumatizing. Don't get me wrong, we should not at all be blaming the victims in these situations, but perhaps we're also not safe saying that anybody who has committed a sexual crime is a knowing sexual predator. And the victims are the other side of this coin that I've not mentioned yet, but they apply consistently through all of these, and the problem will always be the same. Because imagine being the victim of any of these three, and you hear the song come on the radio, you hear it come over the PA in the shopping centre, you hear it sung by 50,000 people in a sports stadium. Now imagine that you are any victim of sexual assault, be it as a minor or as an adult, and you hear those same songs which you can't help but associate with sexual assault. Hell, with Michael Jackson, there are probably songs that he sang that helped those people get past their trauma and return to a new normal. The situation is fucked up, and I have no answers for you. Sexual assault is a terrible thing, and it can do a type of damage that is potentially far worse than anything that your standard physical assault could ever do. It doesn't just cause the kind of trauma that you would get from being mugged or from being in a war zone, but rather it can inspire a kind of trauma that might make you not trust your friends and your family in a way that nobody should ever have to. Half of my videos seem to be about how important it is for people to trust each other, but sexual assault victims have very good reason to not be able to do that. That being said, music is a wonderful thing. These people have created works that can inspire a spontaneous and visceral joy in a way that books and movies just can't. You may tell me that a Bryan Singer or a Kevin Spacey film might be very interesting, might be seminal, might be award-winning, but I don't think you're going to be able to show me an example of somebody putting 100,000 people into a stadium to watch The Usual Suspects and having every single one of them know every single word of that entire film. Music is a phenomenon separate from anything else, and losing proven great music is an undeniable loss to society as a whole. More so than usual, there are no right answers here. There are just various shades of uncomfortable answer, and all of them are going to leave somebody justifiably and deeply unhappy about those answers. And what that means is that, once again, more so than usual, what this needs is people expressing themselves down in the comments and in their discussions. Probably unlike most situations, this is one where it would benefit from people being very emotional about their opinion on the subject, because at the end of the day, people's emotions are going to be a massive part of wherever we end up with this discussion. And I can't really do anything more than that, so I'm going to leave it to you in the discussion. And in the meantime, I'll go come up with some more videos, shall I?